right, I just started the recording of this open meeting in compliance with CMS. For the record, prior to doing so, I announced that Palmetto GBA would make an audio recording of the open meeting and consented on behalf of Palmetto GBA. All right, well, again, welcome everyone. We have one presentation today for our JJ open meeting, and that is Dr. Kraus. Dr. Kraus will be speaking to the draft policy surgical treatment of nails. So Dr. Kraus, I will let you introduce yourself and give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stroud. Appreciate having the opportunity to present to all of you on behalf of Tennessee Podiatric Medical Association and the American Podiatric Medical Association. I am currently the CAC rep for the Tennessee Podiatric Medical Association. A little bit of background on myself, just to give everybody a perspective of where I'm coming from. I am the current sitting CPT representative to APMA, for APMA to the AMA. I've been involved in health policy probably for 25 out of my 30 years in practice. I am a past president of the American Podiatric Medical Association. I currently still sit on all of the APMA health policy committees, including the coding committee, DME subcommittee, and health policy, which the CAC process is part of. I just want to take a few minutes of everybody's time to talk about the proposed local coverage policy. I believe that Melissa told me that everybody has a copy, but I'm going to put it up here. Hopefully I can share my screen with everybody and everybody can see my screen. Just appreciate the opportunity to speak. In actuality, having been on the call earlier this morning, there are probably some additional points that I will probably address that they made me think about, but I'm going to get started. Hopefully you all can see my screen. And I think that, what I want to say is that we understand as an association that Medicare has to currently update and address policies to make sure that the healthcare trust is protected and the constituents and the members are protected. And as an association, we realize that many of these policies have to be updated or changed based on utilization, overutilization, lack of utilization, payment policies, and just technology things that change. There's a variety of different things. And so, this proposed local coverage determination policy that has come up actually had, 4 different areas. And so there are areas that we actually agree on as an association, and we feel that it will be our responsibility in conjunction with Palmetto to make sure that we educate our members as these changes happen. So, we agree with the proposed limitations about trimming, cutting, clipping, or debridement of nails, the removing of small chips or wedges of the nail or skin that does not require anesthesia, simple treatment of ingrown toenail, e.g. trimming, cutting, clipping of the distal unattached nail margins, and surgical treatment of the asymptomatic conditions. That's not an issue for us, and we don't have a problem supporting these changes. We don't agree with the proposed limitations on repeat nail excision on the same toenail or fingernail following a complete excision for permanent removal. And we don't agree that when a permanent nail avulsion is performed, a repeat nail avulsion of the same toenail or fingernail performed more than every 32 weeks or 8 months for toenails, or every 16 weeks or 4 months for fingernails is really appropriate. And by the way, all of these comments were being made with reading all of the reference articles that Palmetto referenced, which actually we don't think that the data is really reflective of, as well as our clinical experience that we've seen. We don't agree on the repeat nail excision on the same finger or toenail for permanent removal, because there's a few different reasons that we need to think about. And I know this was brought up earlier today, and the way the code is written talks about having the procedure performed. It says partial or total, but doesn't really address that. So if you think about it, on the fingernail or the toenail, we have really 3 options. We have the medial border that can become ingrown. We have the lateral border that can become ingrown. And there have been many occasions where I see bilateral borders that are ingrown, and that it's better to remove the whole nail as opposed to just taking out a border. So the reality is, when you look at the data, there's nowhere in the literature that talks about 100% success rate for a procedure. I mean, to think that you could remove an ingrown toenail or an ingrown fingernail on one border and then never be able to perform a procedure on that same digit again is almost impossible. There's no 100% success rate with any procedure that's done. So as we said, that you can have one border and then another border may be required to have something done on it. If you look at, that's what I talked about before. When you look at the literature and academics, partial nail avulsion, which is the most common with phenol or chemical matrixectomy, has a 4% recurrence rate. There is a surgical excision that has a 38% recurrence rate. And so I think that in order to at least make this policy acceptable for patients' care, is I think that we have to have the ability to either append the 76 or 77 modifier. And obviously, there's also going to be the importance of the physician's clinical documentation, for medical necessity. I mean, I think that's important with everything, but especially if we're applying modifiers that kind of override a policy. I know that our association is going to have to take significant time to put out information that educates our physicians on the policy and how they have to document accordingly. When you think about the avulsion, again, we don't agree on that for probably very similar reasons. You're going to have the medial and lateral border. I will tell you that in my practice, and I now am not in clinical practice anymore. I just run clinical trials. In my practice, especially with my younger population, I can't tell you how many children came in with ingrown toenails from getting their hands caught in a car door, or getting hit by an object, or getting it caught on a door going through it. I mean, to put a limitation of not being able to do something for 16 weeks, when again, we're held to the same limit based on the code descriptor, and I guess, we're talking about a different story, do we need to have additional codes in this category? I mean, we can go down that road. Obviously, as a CPT person, having additional codes is not always easy, but, it may be that obviously that the codes may need to be better defined, but that's a completely different story, and I probably don't want to go down that road. But when you look at the non-permanent avulsion, I think one of the reasons and things that we talked about is that when you look at the data, and maybe it does take 8 months for a toenail to grow full length, but the ingrown toenail doesn't always occur at the distal end. The ingrown toenail could be at the proximal portion of the nail. So it may be that we performed a partial avulsion. There are some patients that it is contraindicated to do a permanent procedure. I will tell you that on my brittle diabetics or my patients with severe PVD, I don't do chemical matrixectomies because causing a chemical burn, which is what it really does, may turn into something worse that's not going to heal efficiently. So it may be that these patients have to have subsequent avulsions performed to prevent them from getting any type of abscess or infection from the recurring ingrown toenail, but one that can't be treated with a permanent procedure. So just because you look at the total length or time that it takes for a full nail to grow back, it doesn't always have to be that there is a problem at the distal end of the nail. It could happen at any point during the process. And one of the things I used to see really well in clinical practice, and I used to, until you do an ingrown toenail, so if you haven't done one, it's really hard to visualize. And I wish I would have made a slide that visualizes this. We have patients that on their own will take a nail clipper and they will dig into the nail groove and cut out the distal part of the nail that they think is ingrown. And what they've done is they've actually cut out the distal portion, but wherever the apex of their cut is, they've left a nail spicule. And what happens is that nail spicule will continue growing. And there are times where I've gone in and taken out a medial or lateral border that was 2 to 3 millimeters in length, and in the middle of that removed portion was actually a spiked V from where the patient tried to provide their own care. So I'm telling you that these ingrown toenails could happen at anywhere across the line. Our suggestions would be either to remove these two limitations, which obviously we would think is the best, and have physicians be accountable for documenting medical necessity for why they're doing something, or mirror the guidance of what Novitas and First Coast did by allowing the performance of these two limitations with modifier 76 and 77 and documentation specific as to the indication, such as an ingrown toenail of the opposite border or a new pathology on the same border that was recently treated. That's all I have in my slide. And I want to add one more thing that came up on the call this morning, which I think was a really good question that was brought up by Dr. Harwood. And this has to do with the ABNs and when to fill something out, because I know that from a Medicare perspective, it's not necessarily an issue on DME, but we as providers are suffering through very similar with DME, where they have something called same and similar, where we have to actually look up in a portal, see if a patient received a durable medical equipment device that is considered same and similar, document accordingly for dispensing a new device that, in our opinion, is not same and similar, but those are the guidelines, and also having the patient sign an ABN. What I can tell you is this happened at the tail end of my career. And one, as soon as you ask the patients to sign an ABN, the first thing they say is, I can't afford it. If Medicare isn't going to pay for it, I'm not going to get it. So the question that came up this morning was, if this policy is instituted, particularly without the 76 or 77 modifier, we're going to need particular guidance on how and when to do an ABN so that it's not done inappropriately or overutilized. And we're also going to need to know how, as a physician or as a practice, we are able to identify if a patient previously had a procedure performed by another provider. I really think that there are a lot of things that need to be thought at by Palmetto and the powers that be with the implementation of this policy. I think probably the easiest solution is, of course, not having a new policy, but obviously I don't think that's going to happen. So with respect, I'd like to submit that we ask that at least Palmetto follow the guidance that was provided previously by Novitas and First Coast. Anybody has any questions or would like to comment on anything that I've said, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And I hope that I covered everything with a good enough explanation for everybody to get a good understanding.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kraus. That was an excellent presentation, a lot of good information. Yeah, I will echo. Does anyone have any comments? Anything regarding what Dr. Kraus has said? Anybody have any questions for Dr. Kraus?
Tough audience.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Dr. Kraus. That was excellent.
That's my pleasure.
Right.
May I ask a question of y'all?
We'll try to answer it. It's hard to directly answer questions and answer any directly any comments on this call, but go ahead.
My question is pretty simple, and I think I may know the answer, but I'm just curious, and if you can't answer, that's fine. But can I ask what the impetus of this type of policy is? I mean, I understand why certain policies come out with the RUC data and utilization, but this just seems to be, just in general, such a strange policy to have been developed. And I'm just wondering if anybody could share the light on what would be the cause of a policy like this to be developed.
Right. And with Dr. Kraus, that's discussions that are held within Palmetto GBA. And to be honest with you, I don't think that we could answer that on this phone call.
Okay. Never hurts to ask. I always learned you can ask a question and where somebody could do is say no.
Right.
Is there anything else that I need to, anything else you need from me, Dr. Stroud?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I appreciate you taking the time to develop this presentation. Again, there was some excellent information in this that we'll be able to look at. And I also appreciate you taking the time to present that to us today and be on the call. I do want to, that is our only presentation for today. I do want to remind everyone that's on the call that we are more than happy and actually encourage, if you want to submit any formal comments about the policy for the treatment of nails or for any of our other proposed LCDs, that the preferred way to do that is in writing. Those comments can be submitted to a.policy@palmettogba.com. Again, that's the letter A.policy@palmettogba, all one word, a.policy@palmettogba.com. So one more time, a.policy@palmettogba.com. That is the preferred way to submit any formal comments. That way we can look at those comments and adequately address those comments in the response to comments articles that are associated with each policy. And those comments can be submitted on or up to May the 14th, 2022. May the 14th is the last day for comments. As I mentioned earlier, on this particular phone call or conference call, we can't address directly any questions or comments, and we can't accept any more new presentations. However, that being said, we have just a few minutes left. I did want to just see if there was anyone else on the call would like to make a brief comment about any of our proposed policies. We have looks like we have about 5 or 6 minutes left in our time. So I just wanted to make sure that if anyone did want to comment, that they had that opportunity. Again, our preferred way is through writing. Anyone on the call? All right, I'm hearing nothing. Again, I do appreciate everyone being on this call. This is an important part of the LCD process. We take this very seriously. I know the goal here for all of us is the care of the beneficiaries. And so I want to again thank everyone. Thank you, Dr. Kraus, again for your time and the effort that you put in to your presentation. And with that, if there's nothing else, then we'll conclude the JJ open meeting for May 2022. Thank you, everyone.
Could I ask one more question, Dr. Stroud?
Yes.
Will we as an organization get notified prior to the final publication, or once we won't know anything until once the final decision is made and it's published?
So what will happen is that once the response to comment, or I'm sorry, once the comment period has ended, which will be May the 14th, we'll have a chance to look at those comments, respond to those comments, and make any changes as needed, if needed, in the policy. That policy will then go back out on the Medicare coverage database along with the response to comment article, and will give you a chance to look at that policy prior to it becoming effective. Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I've looked, but I think once the policy is if it's revised, it goes back out, and I think it's 45 days that
there will be a 45-day notice period, and that notification is sent out through the Palmetto GBA email update or the listserv. So Dr. Kraus, if you are not signed up for that, I can assist you with getting signed
Okay.
up.
I think I am, Melissa, but if you look and I'm not there, if you could assist me, I would be greatly appreciative.
Okay, will do.
Yeah, we can definitely get that to you. And yeah, we want to give everyone a chance to look at these policies before they are go final.
And Dr. Stroud, thank you for getting back to me on our other issue. I really appreciate that. I shared that with my leadership. So
yeah, no problem. Yeah, I know everybody's anxious about that, and I wanted to make sure that I got you a response. All right. Well, thank you everyone again, and this will conclude our meeting. Have a great afternoon.